on this computer. Okay, welcome everyone to the November 3rd iteration of the MicroProfile live Hangout release meeting, not working group call, maybe kind of a little bit because I added it to the agenda. Okay, so a link to the meeting minutes is in the chat. Please click on the link and add your name as a meeting contributor. And the name of your organization is optional. This meeting is recorded and the contents of the chat will also be provided along with the uploaded recording to our YouTube channel. And I think that is the normal spiel. So at this point, we are now, I inserted a working group discussion because Sharon reached out to me saying, hey, there's some formalities that we really have to consider or deal with that is kind of news to us. So we're all a little bit new at this, running our own working group. So Sharon, would you like to go ahead and
Sure.
start? Yeah, thanks.
And apologies for last minute. There's a lot going on these days, as it is for everybody. So one of the things that, as we got close to where we, the steering committee call at the last time, well, I guess the inaugural call, the idea that came out of that was that there wasn't going to be regular steering committee meetings as such. And typically, our experience with standing up new steering committees, especially at this particular juncture being new, we tend to see them meeting on a bi-weekly cadence. And then what that allows is that the minutes from the meeting, when they are created, that at the next meeting, everyone can take a formality of saying, is there any objections to approving these minutes? And then the minutes get turned into a PDF and distributed to the working group mailing list. This is a requirement to ensure that our working groups are in compliance with the Eclipse antitrust policy, which I'm happy to share that link in the chat in a moment. So that is a formal requirement that we have to do. So then the question was, if the steering committee isn't going to meet at on a regular cadence, you need to find a way, the committee needs to find a way to approve those minutes and distribute them in a timely fashion. And in fact, this would be considered not a timely fashion right now because the meeting was held on October 20th. So that's the first item. Do you want to discuss that before we go on to the next item?
Sharon, this is great. Thank you so much. I will go in because I was aware of this policy based on Jakarta E. I actually sent a follow-up based on that, but I didn't add the policy because that is your job, right? Eclipse job to tell us, hey, you guys, you need to do this. So thank you so much. We do need to keep the steering calls to a minimum, to 4 times a year, but we can do everything online. And we just need to follow up in that thread and say, I approve. Currently, we have 5 members and we don't have the committee representative. If we use that thread that I can add or I can revive once again, because it was sent a month ago, is it okay for us to close it that way and avoid meeting every 2 weeks? Can we do this?
You can do an electronic vote to approve the minutes. Yes, that's something that you can certainly do. I'm happy to give you an email that you can use for that if you wish. It's pretty straightforward, but just include the resolution in the body of the email and everyone, plus ones. Then you can certainly go ahead and distribute the minutes as approved to the mailing list.
Okay, so then my follow-up question is, we will do this using the forum and the working group. Usually the working group is for voting. Do you?
The working group mailing list, yes, please.
So do you mean we use that one to approve, just like we did the other voting, to approve this and move forward? That suffices. We don't need a new forum. I'm not sure if I understood you.
Oh, sorry. No, you can do all that on the mailing list, the MicroProfile working group mailing list, please.
Okay, that's perfect. So does everyone here agrees that I will take this task to forward that message of a month ago? We are late. I will apologize to the Eclipse Foundation EMO for this because I did send that, but I didn't follow with anything else. I just said it would be nice to do X, right? Can I own that? Are we okay? Who else thinks that we should do something different?
Well,
Take it. Oh, Kevin.
Yeah, I guess before we jump to actions, I want to clarify something with Sharon. Okay, so I know that, we mentioned that, the steering committee per se may not be meeting on a, bi-weekly basis. But because our steering committee and spec committee and even our project committees, I mean, they're all kind of combined. And we're bound to have spec committee discussions because of the voting that we have to do coming up for MicroProfile 4.0. How this is kind of a question, maybe it's back on us, but how do we differentiate then between these different types of meeting minutes and what's required by when?
Actually, Paul, can I ask you to jump in because I'm not familiar with the specification, how often the specification committee meets. Is Paul on the line?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, sorry. So I'm not familiar with the whole specification meeting cadence.
Yeah. So right now we're meeting weekly because we're going through the E9 release, and there's a lot of activity within the spec committee. And an approach that can work here is that if there are agenda topics that pertain to the implementation of the MPSP and the committee's responsibilities as a spec committee need to be added to one of these calls, then I'd just add them to the agenda, call them out as such, and conduct your business as a spec committee with the provision that you have a quorum of steering committee members present. Conduct your business, as per the EFSP, and then record it in the meeting minutes and designate them as spec committee meeting minutes, and then move on. And then in the next, once those minutes are published, then the approach that Amelia proposed with regards to distributing them to the mailing list and asking for an approval is suitable.
Yep.
I mean, I think you can take a kind of an informal approach, but I think you need to pivot to with enough meeting formality in order to fulfill the obligations of the spec committee. And certainly Kevin and David have tons of experience in this, so it was kind of know when we're and need to veer into those spaces in order to and as does Ed Bratt.
Yeah, Paul, I guess that, yes, I do have a lot of experience with this, but with Jakarta EE, we have these two entities completely separate. And so now with MicroProfile, the spec committee and steering committee are combined. And so I'm trying to figure out whether or not, okay, if we're doing activities related to the spec committee and we are minuting them, could that qualify as steering committee meeting minutes or not? I mean, that's the part that I'm.
Well, here's the deal: is essentially there is a steering committee that also fulfills the responsibilities of the spec committee. So you can continue to refer to yourself as the steering committee when you're conducting spec committee business, because that's what's documented in the charter.
Okay.
So I dropped the antitrust policy in the chat for anyone who would like to read it later. But the idea here is to ensure compliance. And so if you are going to discuss steering committee items during a spec committee, then the agenda has to reflect that it's a steering committee discussion.
Whoa. No, there is one committee. It's a steering committee, and the steering committee has dual responsibilities. So
sure, I understand.
Can conduct its business as a steering committee in implementation of responsibilities as per the EFSP.
Sure, but if I guess where I was going with this, Paul, was if the meeting is called as a spec meeting only, but we're getting into steering committee agenda items, those items would need to be part of the agenda.
Well, from a governance perspective, meeting minute, or sorry, agenda topics need to be published 24 hours ahead of time.
Exactly. That was
So
my
that's, I
point.
mean, that's just, spec committee or steering committee.
Okay. That was
So,
my,
I mean,
that
as
was
long
my
as they're
point.
published ahead of time, I think if you can be a bit loose with regards to which hat are you wearing at a particular point in time. But overall, the charter has one committee, and that's the steering committee.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a follow-up, and thank you so much, Kevin, for bringing this up, because this is the very first call from MP40, and I don't consider it a steering committee. We actually don't want that formality here. We are not voting onto anything. Everyone here is equal. There are no leading. The community that shows up, that are the ones contributing to MicroProfile, are the ones that are helping with MP4. Now, it is valid point for us to decide if we want to add a level of complexity, as Kevin says. But as Amelia, as the committer and contributor, I am a -1 on that one. Every single time we add more complexity, we decrease the power of the community to decide to join, because we think someone else will do the job for us.
Oh,
Well, wait a minute.
The requirement here is in implementation of the MicroProfile specification process. There is some responsibilities that the steering committee will need to fulfill, and those responsibilities or those items will need to get published in meeting minutes ahead of time, or meeting agenda ahead of time, discussed as agenda topics in the call, minuted, and minutes approved, but no more than is absolutely necessary in order to implement the MPSP.
Right. And I'm not trying to make this more complex. I'm trying to clarify, because we're doing things differently with the MicroProfile working group than we have with the Jakarta EE one. And so I'm just trying to figure out how we adjust or clarify, document, whatever our processes as it concerns the steering committee and spec committee and normal MicroProfile activities.
Well, I think the approach is, if there is a topic that the steering committee, let's say with its implementing its spec committee responsibilities, needs to get covered in one of these meetings, could be a plan review for a specification, could be a release review for a specification, could be getting ready for release reviews. Then publish that ahead of time in your agenda, discuss it as required, minute it as required, and publish them, vote on the minutes, publish the minutes. And if one of the governance topics is to initiate a vote or have a vote in a meeting, then same thing applies. I think what you're trying to do here is adopt a more informal approach, and then dial up the governance as much as needed when needed. But if it's not needed, then don't let it get in the way.
Yep. And so I think the big thing that's coming out of this is that we just, it could be that every one of our little hangout meetings, that the first part of it might be for official business, if you want to call it that. But it depends on our agenda and having items on the agenda beforehand so that we would have, enough notice that it was going to be discussed.
Right. And particularly because if it requires a quorum, then you want to make sure you've got a quorum of your committee members present.
Yeah.
Right.
And to be a member in good standing. You want to be present.
Go ahead, Emily.
Sorry. So it's if I understand correctly, so basically in the spec committee meeting, we have the steering committee agenda. We just it's still, the minutes is still put in this live hangout meeting minutes, or we need to move that agenda and then take notes and put it in the steering committee minutes.
I'd say as long as you're consistent, then it doesn't matter so much.
Okay, maybe we just do a.
Yeah, I really want to keep the two separate, the community minutes and the steering committee minutes, so we know it's more obvious about what's official and you know, official guy. Well, hopefully you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know. Yep.
and what's community and what's discussion, right? Non-binding discussions. So
Yeah. I like it.
So one thing I did do, just to let everyone know, and I don't plan on doing this in the future, is I did reformat these meetings a little bit. All the content's 100% the same, but I did reformat it just to make it more readable. And going forward, I plan to do it. Like I said, I don't really plan to do this going in an ongoing basis. So I was just trying to figure out what the right, you know, a better looking way of doing it is, so it's a little bit easier to follow. So for example, I put the votes in their own subtable. So just an FYI, so when we think about approving these meeting minutes, and if we send out a note, if we continue with the approach that Amelia brought out earlier, just be aware that they were reformatted, but no content was changed and no animals were hurt during the production of that document. Okay.
I like that. I like that simplicity. Super simple. This.
So quick question, because I joined late and so I'm lacking a little bit of context, but I got a lot of it from what Kevin was saying, I think. But it seems like, is there an intent to make the Tuesday call that we have, some portion of it be an official, you know, committee meeting with roll call? And is that the intent?
I think
No.
Only when needed.
No.
Yeah, only when needed.
No.
Okay. But I mean, when do we decide when it's needed?
We will decide before the call, when depending on the topics, and we will use the forum, the main forum, to say, hey, we're going to do this, and then we will send the agenda to the working group with the community forum. That would be the recommendation.
Okay.
Kevin is right. And Paul, it's so nice that we have this flexibility to try out stuff openly. And Kevin, really good call out.
I was going somewhere. So I just asked questions I hadn't given my thoughts yet. So the one thing I would caution about is it's okay for us to do that, but our good standing rules are aggressive. You cannot miss more than 1 out of 4 meetings and you're not in good standing.
Right, and that's why the agenda needs to get published ahead of time.
Well, and not just ahead of time, like a day in advance. Like if we're going to say that, because a lot of these people have other jobs and we need to be super sensitive of their time. And if we start at a pace that they can't participate in, they're all going to fall out of good standing and all the work we did to get them included goes away. Or we start working without their participation and we start ignoring the good standing rules, and that's not great either. So we can do this, but we just need to be super, super conscious that the good standing rules do not allow them to miss more than 1 out of 4 meetings.
Judicious in this application. So I think that's fair. So I think Amelia had volunteered to get the October 20th steering committee minutes approved, because we haven't done it. And thanks again, Sharon, for bringing this up, that they need to be approved within a timely manner. Amelia was going to send out a note, and I'm guessing someone's just going to have to second it, and then a third person is going to have to approve it.
You know what? Everyone needs to vote. This is how it happens. Everyone will have to vote. There are 5 members, and then I will close it by saying approve and finalize.
Let's assume that we approve. So lazy consensus.
How do we reach that out with a second?
Well, if you're going to carry out an electronic vote, you need to carry out the electronic vote, right?
Yeah. So that is what I wonder. Like, we should do electronic +1s and move forward.
That's it. +1. Everybody responds, and you're good to go.
And you know what? I agree with that. I will ping each one of you if you don't reply within 3 days. I will, because we're already late. So
we're talking about approving the minutes. Is that it?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if you want to approve something quickly on a call, someone makes a motion, someone seconds it, you say, are there any objections? And if there are none, you're done. You don't have to tick down the box. You don't have to do everything with electronic vote.
Yeah. So David, that that's the part of the meeting that you missed.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Because we don't have regular enough steering committee meetings to accomplish that type of, quick vote on our calls.
Okay, I got it.
So that's what we're trying to resolve.
Yeah, if we do it offline, it's okay because, that it's all right. It allows more of the jugs to participate. So I'm a very big fan of
Okay, so
offline.
okay, so will the vote be done on the MicroProfile working group mailing list?
Yes, it needs to happen via the working group.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
then
please.
I'm fine.
And you can CC the regular list just so, again, people are aware
Yep.
that it's there continuously.
Yep, that is tackled, but really, really good call. Sharon, thank you so much for reviving that original thread a month ago. And we do apologize. We just forgot about that thread. I literally forgot about it.
Yeah, they're keeping us honest. I like it.
I love it. And it's this
Okay.
recorded.
Next topic. That was 25 minutes. I was hoping we can get to the checklist, but we got to hit the other one too. So Sharon, you also brought up the committer member election, I think. What are our like responsibilities that we're going to have to do and what kind of time frame?
Well, I guess, during the steering committee call at the inaugural call, I think it was agreed that the timing wouldn't be discussed to initiate the ballot right away because we were in the middle of moving, restructuring to a spec project, which meant that we were going to have certain committers that may lose temporary access because they didn't have paperwork in place. So the idea here is, if you were holding another steering committee meeting, or when you hold your next call and you include this in your agenda, you can, depending on if you agree to initiate the ballot to start this election, and identify who you would like to hold this election. I believe there was some discussion whether the Eclipse Foundation would do it for the working group or not. So there's just some decisions to be discussed about when you would like that election to kick off.
So I'm going to bring up one thing here. I think it would be nice to have a committer member vote on the final specs, right? Because that's probably, outside of the committer election itself, that's our next probably major vote, is voting on that. So that means we would have to have a steering committee meeting before the vote in order to kick off the election. We should probably have one meeting before that. And then there's the conclusion of the election and then the vote. So that doesn't really, hopefully, in a good world, that doesn't leave us a lot of time. Hoping that we're going to get 4-0 out this year. So, we could basically say, get your name in the hat before next week, and we could make this call, the first part of this call next week, be a steering committee meeting where...
It's too short of a notice, by the way.
Well,
anyway,
we could also, what do we need a steering committee meeting to kick off the election for? Is just simply...
We probably don't absolutely require it, but we could vote. Well, first of all, we need to know who's putting their name in the hat.
Right.
Two. We have
That's
two.
the most important thing. Basically, for us, we could simply run it. We could simply get everything going and have the steering committee go, yep, keep doing that. That looks good. Do that. It doesn't have to be like the steering committee plans it all out. It could all be community organized, and then the steering committee can just say, that sounds like an election process that we like, do that. And
so the question then becomes, when do we kick off that election? We have so far 2 interested parties. I think we had 7 or 9 committers that needed to sign the individual participant paperwork. I think we have at least 3 done.
So maybe just an update on that front. So we did lose some folks, some committers by way of the paperwork, which we had been talking about, that they would need legal paperwork to be part of the spec project. So there are people that had indicated interest to us that they were working that paperwork through their legal departments in their organizations. And so if you were to do it today, there's at least a couple of people that wouldn't be able to run in the election because they're not committers to the project at this particular juncture. So you could use the timing as an incentive, not that anyone can really do much with their legal departments to hurry things along, but if you were to put out a date to say, you know, we are going to start in 2 weeks' time, that at least gives those folks a couple of weeks to be able to apply some pressure, hopefully, to their legal department to say, you know, I really need my paperwork signed so that I can be part of the election. We did that in another working group, and it actually proved to be a good way to get paperwork solidified.
I have a question, Sharon. Do you have an update? We have been waiting on that. We have two committers, independent committers, Brno Batista and Edwin Dirks, who have agreed to run for it. They have nominated either themselves or others. But how many have we lost on this? And is it, if we don't know the number, how can we decide?
Well,
You've lost 6 have been suspended, and 2 have been completely removed because they were totally inactive.
Can I ask a question?
Oh,
not
hi.
to be confused. Hi, this is Edwin. Committer member elections, it does nothing have to do with the committer representative, right? Like, I mean, I think you referenced that, but it's a difference, right?
Yeah,
committee
no.
members select the representative.
We are talking about the representative that will vote on the steering committee. This has, currently we have nothing to do with hold up on nominating a new microprofiler for a committer. That's totally not stopped. We can nominate anyone. We're talking about the one, either you or Brno, that will run in these elections with someone else, likely. But these are the committee representative for the steering committee seat. And currently we have 1 seat. So we're talking about that one.
Yeah, so it is connected. So my paperwork is still at the legal department of my company. So yeah, unfortunately, it's not done yet.
No, it's not
so
done,
if,
right?
So if I don't have these papers ready for the time that the election will be, then I cannot participate as a committee member. So I cannot represent so then I don't understand correctly, right?
Yes. No, you're understanding correctly, Edwin.
Okay,
you
thanks.
You cannot run. You can't be nominated because you're actually not a committer to the project itself at this particular time.
So we need to be patient. We cannot rush it to next week. We all are working. The Eclipse Foundation EMO are working. It has been almost 2 months, right, since you guys started contacting every individual, the 9 listed, and now Edwin became a MicroProfile committer about a month ago, and you're still going through the process, right? It went out. So we need time and patience. Can we wait? John, I understand Paul, thanks. I understand what you're talking about. It would be awesome to have the vote for the committer, the representing the committers. But if we don't have it, that is not a deal breaker because the committers are the ones doing the work for the release. Their tracing will be added in the repos and in the work.
I agree with John that it would be great when we put the specs up for 4.0 spec for vote, that we have our committer representative and we have the will of the community recorded. That would be really ideal.
Yeah.
So then we will move them. We don't have the release date. So we're talking about maybe end of the year because this might take another month.
We just need to figure out when the release date is, and then that gives us some indication.
Well, so in that case, I would kind of pause this discussion because what's going to drive that is going to be the checklist, right? That's currently right now the checklist for what it's going to take to release specifications is really the critical path for pretty much most, if not all, the other release-related discussions. So I would like to switch the conversation over to the checklist because I'm losing a sense of when we're going to be able to release MicroProfile 4.0, and that checklist is the gating factor right now. So I don't know. So I'm going to kind of now shift the agenda over to that, and that's I'm scrolling the doc. Kevin and David were kind of leading that discussion, and Scott too. But Scott's he's out of the office today. I think he's on PTO. So David and Kevin, if you can kind of maybe lead this discussion about where we are and what we need to cover in terms of the specification checklist. Go.
Oh. Okay, I'll start, David, but I know that you'll be able to just jump right in. So you know that Scott put together this PR, and originally we were looking at trying to do like a PR checklist, like what we do with Jakarta EE. And one of our previous meetings, we decided, well, that's not really going to fly right now because we don't have any place to submit a PR to related to this information. So then it was decided, okay, let's do an issue template. And so I know after last week's meeting, I went out and I started to look at it and I offered some input and stuff. But as John just indicated, Scott's been out, so he hasn't been responding to my comments. But by looking at some of the other items in our agenda, it kind of looks like Emily has been trying to move forward with trying to get a config RC5 available and trying to follow the template. And so it looks, and Emily, I'll let you speak up here. It looks like you're making some progress based on what the template is requesting.
Yeah, so it's yeah, Roberto and I is working together and trying to see, I mean, how can we make this all these kind of artifacts, all this staging area improved, and also try our best to kind of get the checklist ticked. So far, for the Spec PDF and the Spec HTML and API doc, so this is all in the download area. And then once I do have done the Jenkins build, so that automatically go to the Sonatype staging area. So I haven't clicked the release button. So as you can see, 1353, so that will stay in the staging area. So we could use that as a vote. So basically we can vote this one if we are happy, and then we click the release button, and then the artifacts will go to Maven Central. If not, and then we will start all over again and do another RC6.
So have you created an issue with this template or not?
No, I haven't. So because I looked at Scott time like that PR, I think I have some questions as well. Like I made some suggestions.
Yep.
So, but I since Scott is kind of on PTO, he has not updated.
Quick question. So you have all those download links. I don't know who was showing that. I guess is that who's driving the screen? Is that you, John?
Yep.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, well, let's find those download links. Not that one.
Go to the
You want to come back to that one, but
the minutes one.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Are all these things coming out of the staging repository?
So that's a little bit complicated. The first 3 links is on the download and not in the staging, because we don't release the Spec PDF HTML to the Maven Central. So okay. Yeah, they are not.
How do we make them then? So like when we do a Maven release, do we not?
No, when we do a Maven release, we haven't done the release. We haven't done this kind of release or the Spec PDF and HTML to the Maven Central before.
I thought we had been putting our specifications in Maven Central.
No.
No.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
When we generate, so how do those get generated? Is it outside of our release process? I mean, like, because you do a Maven release prepare and Maven release perform, and then you get some artifacts.
Right. This generates part of the Jenkins build. But Jenkins build do not push this the doc to Sonatype. Sonatype only get .gr files.
Yeah, so the build basically pushes them, sorry, I'm looking for it, to the downloads directory, right? The one I have highlighted here, right? That's on the Eclipse site. Then what we do is in the releases directory, what happens is when we actually do the build, it puts them in the Eclipse download directory, and then we link to them here, right? So if I were ever to point to anybody today, where do I go get the spec? I would point to this specific release in GitHub, and that would link them to all the information
Okay.
in terms of the specs.
Right.
So we published the API, the TCK. And so, you know, I'm looking at, so we have a MicroProfile config spec artifact in Maven Central, but that just apparently contains the PALM. All right. I mean, is there any reason we don't generate the spec in all these things and publish them in Maven Central?
Well,
Right.
I believe that you're not even able to put a PDF or HTML directly on Central. I'm not sure, but we can definitely generate an assembly with a zip of both and put it over there as a zip file. That should be fine.
Yeah, I mean, you can put any artifact you want in Maven Central. You can put NPM stuff in there if you'd like. So there's no limitations that say these file types aren't accepted. It's really a matter of licensing.
I think we talked about this a few years ago.
Yeah, many
yeah.
years ago, and that's when we kind of decided that we were not going to put the specs out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There
well,
was a long thing. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to change our processes now. I mean, you know, we should do whatever our process is currently, so there's the least amount of change.
Yeah.
If we want to do something else in the future to simplify, definitely that's a good goal for long term. What I would say is that if you look at the links in the download, you know, none of those all are permanent looking, right? And so if we have to abandon the release and re-roll it, you know, we'd be putting up a vote with all the same links. And then people start to get confused. They don't know if they've downloaded the current one or the old one or when it was changed, or they send emails. Did you put new stuff in there? You know, and it's also the official download area. So we would have things in there that are not actually final yet. And so, you know, that's kind of an issue. So the one way to handle it would be, you know, something like MicroProfile / you know, staged. And we use the similar staging number, and we put the things there. And then when the vote's completed, we just move them to where they're supposed to go in the root. And ideally, the stage number would be the same as the stage number that we use for the Maven thing, but that might be a little bit complicated for our Jenkins build immediately, because we might have to change the order of some stuff. But, you know, at the very minimum, we should have some sort of, you know, non-permanent directory that we can blow away and recreate during the build.
Actually,
So
David, that is what Scott suggested in the issue template as well.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't quite understand like this permanent kind of location, etc. Because every time when you do release, the directory will be created. So if it's kind of we decided not to use it, so it will stay there for historic purpose.
Yeah, the spec process sort of requires you to do finishing steps once the spec is voted on and complete. So it would be a finishing step that someone would need to either by clicking a button in a Jenkins job that did it for you, but there would need to be something that grabbed the things that were staged in the download directory and then moved them to the final download directory.
Right. I'm not sure. I mean, like
We don't have that now, right? Definitely.
Right. But I'm not sure whether Eclipse kind of this infrastructure is able to cope with that. So
we have it for the Jakarta side of the fence. I wrote it. It's not crazy terribly hard. It's
okay.
just, you know, we just need to decide what our format is. The real change is the Jenkins job that's currently pushing now would need to be updated in some way to push to kind of a non-final sounding space, right? / staged, whatever. Doesn't.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really I don't say maintains because that's the wrong word. Anyone's up to date on that script. I think John Amick created it, you know, 4 years ago or whatever. And I mean, I've dug into it and I've looked at it, but it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Well, if we start changing the specs to Maven Central, is there any worth of publishing the specs here until they're actually final?
Because I guess this is a kind of another solution. Basically, what Roberto suggested, if we don't change this one, and then we push the PDF, HTML, and Javadoc in the kind of the sonotype.
Well, that's better.
Yeah.
Well, my suggestion was my suggestion was a little bit different. I mean, it was mostly that. It's just that instead of basically probably change the Jenkins job to not push anything here until it's actually final, right? So basically you do the release and there's nothing pushed over here, just the Nexus staging repo with all the binaries over there plus the spec, and then have a separate Jenkins job. Basically it's a split of the current job that does this final step of putting the files here.
So where do you put the HTML and PDF then, if you don't put it in here?
On Central as well, right? So basically it will be part of the Maven release build, but you don't do this step of putting so the idea is you do Maven release, put everything on Central, including sources, Java docs, spec, HTML, PDF, right? There's nothing published on the Eclipse Downloads website. So if you want to validate the release, you have to go to the staging repo on Nexus and download all the binaries over there. And once the release passes, then you have a second Jenkins job that updates the Eclipse Downloads webpage with the final binaries.
Yeah, that's what I would definitely recommend. That's just why I asked the question of, do we push these things into the into the staging directory already? Because if we do, there's no need to do this downloads directory at the time we vote. It could be part of the finishing steps.
Yeah, as long as it's end up here, it's good, because I'm quite keen to have this artifact here so that kind of people can click the link directly view online. So I am okay with that approach. Now it's
So quick question, final artifacts have to be in an Eclipse download directory?
It's very useful to be here because when we like put the link, it's a PDF, you click on that link, you just directly click the link here, you can view the doc straight away so that people don't need to download and then open.
Non-zip and yeah. Like we have on our releases page, right? Which is extremely convenient, by the way.
That's a hyperlink to the download.
So how much time will it take us to get this put into one Maven, if we're going to use it, to apply this to what currently is, because we have not been using it. So what is the ETA should we start this week? Because
publishing the specs to Central is only maybe a couple of lines of code in the POM. That's not really a big thing. probably the most thing that's going to take more work is to look into the Jenkins job and be able to split it up. So one thing handles the release and the other, and then have a second Jenkins job that handles the publishing. Because right now they're just doing everything in a single one.
So if we just do the, as you say, a couple of lines, like make this PDF HTML end up in a staging area, and then we can live with this kind of artifact stay in the download area. Is that acceptable? In this case, we can move forward quickly, and then we can do the second step later.
I didn't quite understand how you were saying the download directory factored in. Were you saying it would happen, the download directory would exist during the vote, or would that be done afterwards?
Afterwards.
Yeah, I'm understanding afterwards, but I heard you kind of mention it during. It was unclear. I wasn't quite.
If I did it,
I wasn't referring to you, Roberto. I understand. We totally agree on this, and I was just making sure that I understood Emily. So
yeah, so my point is kind of is that very important to make sure the download directory is not populated by the time we are voting for.
Right.
So
correct.
what I'm thinking.
Got it. That was an important not. All right. Yes.
Yeah.
So sounds like we're in agreement that if we can get the things into the staging directory, basically, if we can get everything we want to deliver that's a binary to be in the staging directory when it's closed, I mean, it makes our lives so much easier.
Right.
You know, then we can vote on that staging directory. We don't need a ton of links to point towards these things individually. Here's the link for the spec. Here's the link for the TCK. Here's the link. We just one link. Everything's in it. And then we can vote. And when the vote completes, we publish. But the publishing step is not a factor in the actual voting. Something we can do afterwards. We have a script that would publish to downloads directory. We have a script that would put these things in the release portion of the GitHub project, and just push the artifacts out to the world and wherever we want them to be.
Yep.
We may even do like an assembly that bundles everything in one zip file, so you don't even have to download separate things. Just download this and name it.
That's
zip.
Convenience. I mean, whatever.
Right.
I have a follow-up here. So, Roberto, since many of us agree with you because it's simplification and it seems the way to go, can you own the write-up? We have a repo, but it's not yet in use. I just sent a message this week about when we can start using it because it would be needed. It will need PRs. Is it possible for you to write a document that will allow for a few of us to review, at least David, John, Kevin, Emily, a few, to review the process and then put it together in documentation so that we all know, then we can circulate it with the forum and then move forward, because this has not been written.
The process is already stated on the checklist, right? So
yeah, it's already there because Scott and I were aiming at that. So I did that big long email about how the staging directories get used over on the Apache side of the fence, and Scott used that for further revisions of the checklist. So there should be something there, but we do need someone to go look.
I can do a review on the checklist. I did review it like a few days ago. What I can do.
Yeah.
So Roberto, are you owning the task to do the research?
Just a second.
Yeah, Kevin.
I'd like to clarify the request a little bit, because both Emily and Roberto have already been trying some of this process. And I think it would be really good if we could get an issue created with, the proposed template as it's currently defined, but then, let's work through this and modify it and get it working with this proposed change to Maven Central, so that we're kind of working through the process at the same time. If we try to document the process now and we haven't worked through it to make sure that it's actually going to work, then we're just going to be spinning our wheels for a while.
+1, Kevin. I was documents. What I mean is that we have written the documentation, not only in the Jakarta side, but the Apache side, and there is the write-ups, but we need to put it together. But I believe also, like you do, on doing stuff while documenting. We don't need to wait for perfection. We can adjust things as we go. So good call.
Well, I think Kevin didn't say, I think he said, don't document now, but and I would tend to lean that way myself. Just let's get functional first, and then we'll write it all down.
Let's see what works.
Yeah.
So sorry to interrupt, 5-minute time check. So if we can kind of have any outstanding action items worked out.
Quick thing though, is we had discussed maybe we do want to do a PR to collect the metadata about the specifications that we would need to publish to the website. So we are intending to make spec pages for these websites, and we would need to feed a graphic designer details. That graphic designer will go, well, what's the name? What's the version? What's the little snippet? What's changed? I mean, we can do these things all afterwards. They don't actually have to be part of the voting process. Just throwing it out there, if we wanted to do PRs with that data in it.
So then let me get this. So then if we don't document now, Kevin says create an issue so that there is on trace that we have decided we will document this, or a PR. Can we
got 5 minutes and you're talking about documentation. So I want to restart my topic. I want to restart my topic. The topic is, do we want to require the collection of some sort of metadata about the release as part of the specification process? Perhaps a YAML document that describes the release, so that could be fed into other things as part of the publishing step. The website is a publishing step.
Yep.
Well, anything that's automation is good. The question is, what about 4.0?
Yeah.
Right.
That's kind of what I was going to say, but then also, the site itself, MicroProfile.io. I mean, what is really needed to publish some of this stuff? And so I think if we wanted to define this, YAML or Markdown or whatever format we want to go with, and define that, I think it's fine to start that process. But like what John was hinting at, I wouldn't hold that up as a requirement to get MP 4.0 done.
I think it's pragmatic. I'm fine with that.
Last one.
I think we can do that after the voting and etc. So I think it's at the moment, like we already get a building block and able to point to the release, like the PDF and HTML. I think it's kind of, that's roughly like tell you what's in the 4.0, and then we can like revisit and improve it.
Mm-hmm. That's fine with me. I'm throwing it out there so we have a good discussion, see how we lean, and whatever the outcome is, it is.
You guys have converted me. I'm fine. Like no documentation right now, but I issues PR saying we will do that later. Sounds off.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to clarify, Amelia. That's not exactly the type of issue I'm talking about. I'm talking about an issue that is based off of the template that we're trying to finalize.
Right.
Yeah. So let me kind of try to summarize this. So basically, I think Roberto and I can continue the work on the checklist. So basically take the Scott, the PR, he came up with some template. So we can create an issue on the MicroProfile config. I think Roberto will be able, hopefully Roberto will be able to. And then we will work together trying to get to see whether we can get a PDF, HTML, or published to staging area. And then we can go from there. Basically, we can update on the forum and etc. And then to see how much progress we can make in the next few days.
Sorry about that. Continue. Finish. Okay. In terms of the issue tracker we use, rather than using the config issue tracker, it might be wise for us to use a sort of a central issue tracker, so it's easy for everyone to follow all the votes that might be in progress. There's just one spot.
So you mean So you mean create a issue on the MicroProfile instead of on the individual specs?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So that okay.
That one
makes
or or MicroProfile -WG, which is
okay. That makes sense.
Either one is. I mean, if we're going to do PRs in the future, if we might evolve that way, then it should ideally be the same place.
Yeah, good idea. I like that because you can see how many spec have done this kind of the PR have done these issues.
And you've got like one issue tracker you can look at all the history, and it's all right there, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
all right, with that,
we just need to figure out
top of the hour.
MicroProfile slash or just MicroProfile WG slash whatever one. If we're going to use MicroProfile slash, we probably should just kill the MicroProfile WG one and move it into the MicroProfile one.
You mean GitHub?
Yeah, the repo.
-WG. It's not -WG.
Oh, I just meant MicroProfile in quotes or MicroProfile -WG in quotes. Which repo do we want to use as our official repo?
WG.
Yeah, WG is formal.
Right. So let's do that one. Let's do that one then. So
okay, decision made. I'm gonna sorry, trying to clock manage here, and I know I'm always cutting off somebody at the end of the meeting, and I apologize. But we are at the top of the hour. Let's see any conversations we can finish offline, and in 1 week, same bat time, same bat channel. David, I'm so sorry.
No, let's do it.
no, I'm done. That's fine.
Okay. All right. And thanks everyone for joining, and see you online. And I really hope I see you next week as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
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 Take care. Have a good week, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Let's
Bye-bye.
do that.
Bye, folks.
Bye.